Hi friend, I'm Marcus here with SpeakYourMindMethod.com. So if you are like most of us who've ever struggled with stuttering, you've probably had this thought at least once in your life. And that thought is, if stuttering is just a habit, then why do 99% of people not have this habit while I'm over here in the corner stuck with it for some reason? Like, how did that come about? Why is this the way that things are? Now, first of all, that's a good question to ask. And it's a question that I'm going to attempt to answer in this video. Now, first of all, let's precisely define the words we are using here. So there are two words that we need to understand, and I want to bring you on the inside here. So these two words are habit and tendency. You could also say natural tendency or a tendency that you are born with. But those are the two big words that I want to make sure that we are on the same page about, and then we'll dive deeper into this. It's habit and tendency. So starting with the word habit, what is an example of this word? Like, what is an example of a habit? Well, let's say there's this person who is very moody, just seems that they get affected very easily, and they are quite moody by nature. That is an example of a habit because they respond to their events in their lives and the daily things and just the ups and downs in their lives. It tends to affect them, or this hypothetical person, their mood. They have these moody reactions to things, and that is a habit. It's a habitual, automatic response to life and to situations in life. Now, why am I talking about myself? It's kind of making me uncomfortable, so we should probably move on to the next topic before I get, well, moody. So anyway, that's an example of a habit. It's an automatic response. We all have these things. We are creatures of habit by nature, and our lives are filled with just habits. The way we brush our teeth, the way we put our hand on the steering wheel when we drive, we all have habitual, automatic ways of doing things, right? So that is a habit. Now let's move on to the next word here, which is tendency. Now, a tendency, or at least the way that I'm defining it here, is something that you are born with. You have this inclination for, or there's almost a gravitational pull towards something, or towards a certain way of behaving, or a certain, you could say, way of walking, right? That you inherited from your parents. Probably the way you walk, you didn't have control over that, or not much, and that was a certain tendency that you were born with. Now, as another example here, let's say there's this person that comes from a family that is susceptible to depression. So then perhaps this person has this natural tendency to fall into depression, or to develop these mental states, or experience these depressive episodes, and that might come as a result of there being some sort of tendency underneath it. So those are the two big ideas, the two big words we need to know before we can continue on here. It's a habit and a tendency. Now, you may have already picked up on this, but these two things, a habit and a tendency, are very tightly connected. You cannot disconnect these completely. Your tendencies often become your habits, which can then lead you to forget about the tendency and just feel like you're stuck with this habit and you're not sure really what's underneath it, when often it goes deeper and there's often a tendency underneath that habit that sparked that habit in the first place, much like my tendency to be moody. Okay, so now that we've laid the groundwork, now let's focus in on stuttering and blocking specifically. So we want to talk about this difference between a habit and a tendency as it relates to stuttering. Now, the first thing I want you to be aware of here, and that we all need to understand, is not everybody who stutters has the same story. Everybody's different, and I've especially learned this with every new client that I get, every person I coach. I'm learning the specific struggles and the specific patterns and the specific pain points that my students deal with, and it's almost never the same from one person to the next. There's so much variation here. But from my own observation, the vast majority of people do fall under this camp, or under this heading that I'm about to give you here with the habit, and the tendency underneath the stuttering. Okay, so let's start with the stuttering habit. So everybody who stutters has a habit of stuttering. We are creatures of habit, and you're just not going to be a stutterer unless there is that habitual element to it. And what this means basically is your brain just responds to situations, to speaking situations with this disfluent way of speaking. It's a habit, it's an automatic response. Now, where does this habit usually start? Well, for most people, this habit started, for some people, it started before they can even remember. So when they were very, very young. For other people, it might have been in childhood or during adolescence where they had a moment that was very emotionally painful and embarrassing. Maybe they stuttered in front of a bunch of people or in class or something, and then that left a devastating memory and a very emotionally charged memory that they had a really difficult time letting go of, which then impacted the next interaction and the next time they stood up in class. And then that became this snowball effect of then it eventually turned into this really strong habit that now, this might be your experience where now you feel like it's been this pattern over and over and over again, and it feels like it's unbreakable. Now, I promise it's not unbreakable, okay? But it can feel that way sometimes, right? But that is often how habits start, and that is a stuttering habit. It's an automatic response. You don't have to try to stutter, right? It just happens automatically. Okay, so that's the stuttering habit. Now, the tendency to stutter. Let's talk about this. This is something that I think there hasn't been enough light shed on this particular topic when it comes to stuttering. So there are studies out there that have shown that people who stutter, people who have the stuttering habit, tend to have some dysfunction in a particular part of their brain called the basal ganglia. And because of this dysfunction or these disruptions in their basal ganglia, that can then lead to this, what we then perceive as stuttered or blocked speech. And so this falls under the category of a tendency, something that your brain was probably born with. Now, this may have just activated a thought in your mind, a very unpleasant thought, and perhaps you're thinking like, oh, really? Like, oh no. So there is something wrong with me. There is something wrong with my brain. Like, is that what you're telling me, Marcus? So I am a stutterer all the way down to like my brain is broken? Like, is that what's happening here? Don't worry, because it's not entirely what's happening here. Yes, there probably is that tendency underneath. There probably is some dysfunction, some irregularities in your basal ganglia. But now I'm going to prove to you why that's not as big of a deal as you think. So, with my own story, I come from a family of stutterers. I have a brother who stuttered. I have an uncle who stuttered quite severely. My great-grandfather, although I never met him, but people in my family have told me that, yeah, he stuttered quite a lot. And interestingly, he had a great sense of humor about it, which I respect the hell out of, right? But it runs in my family. That's the point. But what exactly runs in the family? Is it the stuttering? Not exactly. That's more the effect, but it's the tendency. It's this dysfunction in the brain, in the basal ganglia, that gets passed on, and it just pops up now and then in my family line. And so I have no doubt that I have these dysfunctions, I have these irregularities in my basal ganglia, in my brain. But even with that being the case, I still overcame stuttering. I still became fluent. And why was I able to do that? Because of the power of habits. So this all comes back to habits, okay? This is the key to overcoming stuttering. So let me kind of put the icing on the cake to everything that we've been talking about. This is the best part. If you don't remember anything else from this video, remember this. The key to overcome stuttering is this. You make your fluency habit stronger than the tendency that's underneath. So you probably have a tendency, as we talked about, to stutter, and that's okay. Yes, it's difficult and it's not any fun. I get it. I've been there, trust me. But there is a way out. And that way out is by making the fluency habits in your brain, the fluency pathways in your brain, so dominant and so strong that even though the tendency is still there, it's completely overpowered. So it just doesn't stand a chance. So that's the big takeaway. That is the process. That is how you can overcome stuttering. Now, as I said, the tendency is still going to be there. This isn't like you are going to be 100% fluent or completely cured. By the way, I am not 100% fluent and I'm not completely cured. But here's what I am. I am completely free as a speaker. I can live the life I want to live. I can speak freely. I'm not held back in any way. Sure, I'll have little hiccups here and there, but they don't hold me back anymore. I'm never truly stuck with my speech. And as with any habit that you have, so think about a skill that you had as a kid. Maybe it was skateboarding, maybe it was playing basketball. Just think back to a skill that you were really good at when you were a kid. So let's use the basketball example here. Let's say that as a kid, you were really good at playing basketball. But now let's say that maybe you haven't picked up a basketball in 15 years. But what would happen if you and I went to the gym tomorrow and we played basketball? You would probably still be pretty damn good at it. That's because those grooves, those pathways, and those habits and those tendencies that you have, they don't ever completely disappear. Okay? And I'm just gonna, be as honest and straightforward as I can about that. It's not gonna completely disappear. When you pick up that basketball, you're still gonna be pretty good at it. It didn't go away completely. And same with stuttering. It's not like as you become a fluent speaker, it's not like you completely lose access to even being able to stutter. That tendency might still be there. For me, it certainly is still there. And I can feel it, especially on days where I'm perhaps a bit sleep deprived or I'm stressed out about something, or just randomly overall, I just feel my speech wants to come out choppy for some reason. And that's probably just connected to that underlying tendency that is there. But again, my speech no longer holds me back from anything that I want to achieve in life. And why is that? Again, it's because my fluency habits have become so freaking strong that yes, the tendency is still there, but it can't compete anymore with the fluency that I've built. And so the truth is, you do not need to be 100% fluent or completely cured to go live your best life. You absolutely do not need that. What you need are really, really strong fluency habits. And if you are ready to start that process, then what I want you to do is to go watch my free Stop Stuttering workshop. This is an in-depth, step-by-step plan to help you understand what stuttering is and also how to get out of it. I give you a plan, I give you a daily routine, a system to follow. It's all there. And all you need to do is click the link in the description. It's 100% free. It's my Stop Stuttering workshop. So be sure to go check that out. I really think you're going to find it helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.